Hello there. For the second time in a couple of weeks, I was recording a video and hit the wrong button, and I don't have the facilities to take what's good of this and start over, do more, and splice it together. And anyway, I don't like editing. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Those who do it, there's not a problem. Now, I think it is a problem. I think I'm not sure what to call it. It's not really laziness if you're doing it because you're having to do a lot of work, but I hate it where every 10 seconds there's an obvious jump cut. You know, these people can't talk right on camera. Maybe they shouldn't talk on camera. But I was doing a video and decided instead of me shifting, I would shift the camera, and this and that happened, and I wound up accidentally hitting the stop button. So that's gone, and here we are. I'm rebuilding my Whisky Basics playlist. As you know, if you've seen the preceding videos, I somehow deleted the whole thing. I never intended to, but at least the remakes are better, technically anyway, than the previous ones, although better technically is not necessarily a ringing endorsement. You saw the title card, a thoroughly amateur production. Because I was already working on the video, I have already poured whiskey. This time I'll shift. I can never get everything where I want it right off the bat. This is Sagamore Spirit Double Oak Rye Whiskey. It's nice and dark. That comes from being in 2 barrels. One the whiskey aged in for however long, there's no age statement. Then they took it out, put it in another brand new barrel, and because it was brand new, it put extra color and flavor in there. Now I've only had 3 Sagamore Spirit bottles. This one, they're regular, and they're cask strength. And based on those 3, I'm pretty certain that Sagamore Spirit cannot make bad whiskey. But the point of this video, oh man, that's good. Point of this video, although I am drinking whiskey, is to tell you about me. It's Whisky Basics number 8, and that is how long it took me to realize the first time recording this playlist that I hadn't told y'all about me. Most obvious thing, of course, is I like whiskey. I didn't always. Definitely rye. For me, when it's emphatically a rye whiskey, not a bourbon drinker's rye, but a rye drinker's rye, it gives me 2 things. One, there's this mineral note in it. I don't know if it smells like granite dust. I don't know if it tastes like granite dust. I'm not going out and... I could find some granite dust up in the foothills and sniff it and taste it. I'm not going to do that. But it's what it reminds me of, is granite dust. And then there's a vegetal note. It makes me think of thick, hairy leaves, like on a mullein. And those 2 things for me are characteristic of rye. I don't get mint, I don't get dill, I don't get this and that. I get those 2 things, and then whatever else is in the whiskey. But I'm a guy who likes whiskey. I didn't always. As I said, you know, I'm repeating myself repetitively in a redundant manner. I work for the Department of Redundancy Department. What? I'm a nutcase? Duh. I know. I'm crazy. I don't suffer from insanity. I enjoy it. I am probably nowhere near as funny as, in fact, I'm certain I'm nowhere near as funny as Casey Allen of Beautiful Bourbon, but I like to have pun and fun. That's definitely a rye. I, back in 1979, well, actually it started in 78 when I was in tech school with the Air Force. I started drinking mixed drinks. I went to Korea. I did the same. I drank Peach Oscar, Crown beer. OB beer. I once had a Crown and mixed drinks. And I'd have whiskey and Coke, rum and Coke, whatever. And I somehow in all that got the idea that whiskey tasted like turpentine. And when I became a Christian in 1983, and if I remember, I'll get back to that, I stopped drinking altogether. I thought the Bible said don't drink, period. Well, as the years went by, I studied the Bible. I found that it did not say that, does not say that. It certainly allows drinking. There are favorable remarks about drinking. What the Bible condemns is drunkenness. Well, I had no desire to be drunk anymore, so that wasn't a problem. And I'd have a beer now and then. Might be 3, 4, 10 years between beers. I didn't go out and get them. If somebody offered, I'd accept it. And there was a guy I knew in Marlow, Oklahoma. He built me the first computer I ever had. He built them. Back when you still had shade tree computer techs. I've seen him read machine language. Don't ask me how. That's what the computer turns the programming language into. It looks like gibberish, but I've seen him look at a screen of machine language and say, oh, okay, this is what it's doing. He was a Vietnam vet, had been wounded, had been captured for a few hours. He managed to get away, but it still had an effect on him. But one time he offered me a sip of whiskey, and he told me specifically it's sipping whiskey. Well, I sipped it, and I thought it tasted like turpentine. I don't know what it was. It probably was too strong for a totally untrained palate. That's my suspicion. But I didn't have another drink of whiskey until 2021. I had found out that my ancestors on my daddy's side had started out, as far back as I know of, in Henry County, Virginia. Then they moved to Buncombe County, North Carolina, then over, and I don't remember the county, into eastern Kentucky after the war, then down to Arkansas, then to Texas, then to Oklahoma. And then my parents moved to California, and that's where I was born. I don't sound like it. I'm an adopted Texan, and living as I did for almost 20 years in Texas and Oklahoma, I picked up the sound without trying, and now if I want to sound unsouthern, I have to work at it. It takes conscious effort for me not to talk like this. I never tried to pick it up, but I did. And in retrospect, I had a lot of southern exposure when I was growing up without knowing it. But anyway, I'd found out my ancestors, as I say, before and during the war, lived in Buncombe County, North Carolina. I had 4 ancestors serve in the Confederate States Army. And after the war, they moved into eastern Kentucky. Well, that is right in Appalachia, which has had a long liquor-making tradition. It didn't become moonshine, really, until the war, when, in order to fund his unconstitutional invasion of the Confederate States, Abraham Lincoln had Congress impose an excise tax on liquor. And so if you wanted to take your surplus corn and turn it into whiskey, haul it down the mountain, which was easier than hauling the corn, and sell it and get a better return than you could get for the corn, and thus feed your family better, if you wanted to do that, you either had to get a government license for your still and pay tax on every gallon you made, or you had to go into the woods and hide from the revenuers. Well, these were people who weren't prepared to knuckle under, so they went into the woods. Now, did my ancestors make moonshine? I don't know. It is possible, but there's no way to say if it's even probable. Did they drink moonshine? It would surprise the living daylights out of me if they didn't. In that part of the country, opposed to Abraham Lincoln and all his doings, if they didn't drink it, one wonders what they was drinking. Well, they was probably drinking out the branch, which is an Appalachian term for a creek or a stream. You ever heard of bourbon and branch? Bourbon and branch water? That's what it is. A branch is a creek. Well, that got me curious. What were they drinking? What did it taste like? Was it good? To this day, I still don't know. Now, I'm recording this. It is after midnight, so it is on October the 3rd, 2025. What I'm talking about now is back in, say, July and August of 2021, so 4 years ago. I decided I wanted to find out. And while I was at it, let me try whiskey just to prove to myself that it tasted bad. So now you'll remember, well, different places were different. In 2021, that woman up in Santa Fe, the governor, was still forcing us to wear face diapers. Now, the only time I ever did was at work, because I need my job. I got bills, I got food to buy, got my wife to take care of. But just to avoid trouble, I ordered online a jar of what the website, Total Wine website, said was moonshine, or the label on the jar said was moonshine. They're just selling what it says it is. That Total Wine's not making any claims about it. And I said, while I was at it, get me a couple of little bottles of Jim Beam and Jack Daniels. That was all the whiskey I knew at the time. At that time, I didn't even know why whiskey is brown or red. I literally did not know. So I ordered that, tried the moonshine, which I now know was just 80 proof vodka. And I tried the Jim and I tried the Jack, and those, they weren't impressive, but they didn't taste like turpentine. They tasted good enough that I thought, well, I'll try some other whiskey just to see. And here we are 4 years later, and I'm drinking a bottle of rye whiskey, which is $64. Now, I am a bourbon guy, but I do like rye now and again. I have this and a bottle of Wild Turkey 101 rye, and those bottles, once they're gone, I'll be satisfied with bourbon for a few months. But that's how I started drinking whiskey. Now, I mentioned earlier I'm a Christian, and I said I'd come back to that if I remembered. And where are we? 15 minutes. I try to keep these videos short. I am sometimes semi-successful. I did not grow up a Christian. It wasn't that the family was opposed to God, just nobody cared, and that's how I grew up. But through a chain of events, which I'll not go into here, I wound up in a situation where if I was to have a place to live and food to eat, I went to church with my aunt and grandma. And come a night in January 1983, we were going to church. We were driving. I was living in Cisco, Texas, which is my adopted hometown now. Headed out east 5 miles to Corinth Baptist Church. Well, to the meeting house. The church lived. Well, I'm not even going to get into that. It'd take too long. But we were headed there, and I looked out the window. I was sitting in the passenger seat, and it was a partly cloudy night, and the moon was ducking in and out of the clouds. And it occurred to me that if Jesus returned in the clouds right then, as the preacher had said he would, I was in trouble. That's the way I put it to myself. I didn't know anything. I was ignorant. But I knew that if that happened, I was in trouble. And in a split instant, I went from wishing I was not going to wishing we were there. And that's what regeneration does to you. That's what the new birth is. It changes you. It changes your thoughts, your emotions, your attitudes, everything about you. And those who look at people who say they're Christians and don't act like it, and they look at that and they think, if that's Christianity, I don't want it. That is exactly correct. That is not Christianity. Now, am I perfect? No. Is anybody perfect? No. John Newton, the great pastor and hymn writer, and the inspiration of William Wilberforce's effort to outlaw slavery in Britain, John Newton said, "I'm not what I want to be. I'm not what I ought to be. But I'm not what I was, and by the grace of God, I am what I am." That's me. And it all goes back to that split instant in the car in 1983. Since then, I've been studying the Bible. That's 40, however many years. 42 if I'm doing the math in my head right, and don't ask me to swear to it. That stuff's good. On another occasion, I'm going to review this on the channel. And no, I'm not perfect. There are still things inside me that were there then and are there now, and I hate them. And I want to be free of them. And there are other things that from that instant in the car, I have never had to struggle with. Not only I know what I'm trying to say, it's not coming out right. But in some areas, I was absolutely anti-Christian, acted accordingly, and from that instant in the car, I have not even desired to do those things, to say those things, to be those things. It hasn't been even the slight temptation. That's the new birth. That's what makes a Christian. And I do have a channel called Christianity on the Bottom Shelf where you can go and see me explaining Christianity in a way that, at least I hope, is comprehensible to everyone. But about me, what else? I'm at 20 minutes and counting, so I need to go on. I've been married since August of 1979, so a couple months ago was my 46th anniversary. I have 2 daughters in their 40s, a granddaughter who's 20, and another granddaughter on the way, which is going to be interesting. I was born and raised in California with 3 years in Washington. It's not my fault where I was born. It's not my fault where I was raised, but I am ashamed to be a Californian, and I used to be proud of it. One of the reasons I've adopted Texas as my home state, it's not just that I love it there and I love Cisco, but that California has rejected anybody who has half a brain and uses it. Well, I have half a brain and I try to use it. And if you're in California and you like the government, this isn't a political channel, but I'm sorry. If I want a dictatorship, yes, I'll move to California. That's where I can... Well, I'm in New Mexico, so I've got a pretty good dictatorship here. I speak English, obviously. I speak a little Spanish, solamente un poco, pero tengo buen acento y pronunciación. I have some bits and pieces of Korean. My wife's Korean, born and raised. I know a few words of Scots. Whether I pronounce them correctly, I don't know. My Spanish pronunciation is that of a Chicano, because that's who I've mostly learned from. My Korean pronunciation once got me a compliment from a ROCAF colonel. And my wife has told me that what little Korean I speak like a Korean. Not as far as grammar, but as far as pronunciation and accent. What else? I've lived in Albuquerque since 1997. Born and raised in California, lived in Washington, Korea, Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico, visited several other countries and states. Mostly, though, what you need to know about me is just what you see here. I'm a WYSIWYG kind of guy. What you see is what you get. Do I sound like an ignorant hick? Well, I am a hick. I'm not ignorant, although everybody's ignorant, just on different subjects, as Will Rogers said. But I just talk the way I talk, and on these videos it's informal, so I talk informal. Put me in a formal situation, for instance, preaching a sermon, my English is going to be a ton better. But pretty much what you see is what you get. And if you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments. Before I forget, if you like the channel, subscribe to it. If you like the video, like it. If you like it enough, share it. And I'll appreciate it. We're up to 57 subscribers to the channel, the most it's ever been. Might be the most it ever is, too. You know, I want to reach newbies, but how many newbies are out there compared to people who already know whiskey? So, you know, I'm filling a niche. But I'm going to move that aside. By the way, doesn't Sagamore Spirit just make the purtiest bottles? I love them. And being in a southern mood tonight,